Hello. What kind of career trajectory have you been on? Have you had a horrendous one like I have? It's not horrendous. I just ended up in a lot of places that didn't feel good. Took me a long time to find my way. It's only my 40s that I feel finally aligned and happy in my job. When I was young, I'd look at those people who just knew what they wanted to be, went and did what they had to do to be it, and then they were being it and they were paid for it and they were happy. I thought, are you serious? That actually happens? Today I'm going to share my tumultuous journey to finding something that aligns, where my heart's happy. I hope you enjoy this ride because it's fun. Looking back, I have wisdom, but it wasn't easy. In high school, I knew my best subject was art, but I totally ignored that. I thought I had to do all the subjects just in case, keep my options open. So I studied chemistry, biology, economics, maths, and I did really crap at those ones. And I just scraped by and jumped into university at age 17. My first year of uni, I just picked the degree based on what was available at this new university. It was a Bachelor of Arts. Then I changed it to a Bachelor of Business Arts and then to a Bachelor of Graphic Design. I struggled to enjoy it. Felt apathy. And I thought I better drop out. So I got a job in hospitality. I loved hospitality jobs and I really took to them. I found a lot of my needs met. I got to be around people, be fast and efficient, organized, and make order out of mess. My bosses appreciated my hard work. The worst part was I started drinking. I've been pretty sheltered as a kid. So it wasn't until I was 18 that I started to drink. It was like taking off a tight shoe, meaning that I didn't realize how much pressure I'd been putting on myself as a kid. I won't go into my backstory, but essentially I created someone putting pressure on herself to be perfect, to produce, achieve, and be perfect. This causes problems. Having alcohol for the first time, feeling relief. So this led me down a pretty dark road. I got a lot of written warnings and it made me so sad because I knew I was really good at my job. And even my bosses said to me, Melise, you're really good at your job. So it's really obvious that you're hungover and you're burning the candle at both ends. 3 written warnings and you're out. I'm very lucky I didn't go out because I got 3 written warnings. I think someone liked me. It was a bit of a warning, but I didn't listen to it. I had no relief from the feeling the pressure that I put on myself all the time. And it wasn't really the way we talk about mental health today. It wasn't the same awareness back in the 90s. I kept working there until one night my cousin came up for New Year's Eve with her mates. I fell in love with this guy. I was 21. It was love at first sight. So I thought, I'm going to move to Brisbane. Brisbane was like the big smoke. And it was 2 hours away. And I moved to this city to be with my new boyfriend. And I enrolled in a university to be an interior designer. Something I was interested in. I was probably going to be good at it, but I had to study physics, chemistry, and math. The first year of interior design at university, generally, you share it with the architecture students. I dropped out of that. And this was a really hard time because I was in the midst of a serious eating disorder, bulimia. It was really messing with my brain chemicals to the point where I was just flat all the time. I was so depressed. I quit university. I actually ended up on the dole, which is like a government subsidy for unemployed people in Australia. And I felt shit about myself, excuse my French. So some time passed and I ended up moving back to my parents' house, 2 hours drive away, because I'd broken up with my boyfriend and it was my first heartbreak. And I remember I actually considered ending my life. It was that bad. Long story short, I ended up with codependency problems later in life. I got a job back at the same place that I worked at a couple of years earlier at Sizzler, or you can eat buffet restaurant. Not great for someone with bulimia. I battled quietly, silently, with a lot of shame, with alcoholism, and I ended up recovering somewhat and moved back to Brisbane and started a new degree. This degree was a Bachelor of Creative Industries, which is really just a fancy name for a Bachelor of Arts. I majored in graphic design and visual arts. And yeah, much more relevant to me. So I felt more aligned and I was actually quite interested in my degree. It was fun. But when I finished uni, I had been working at a department store called David Jones. I was hired as a Christmas casual. I hated it there. I was so bored. I worked out years later, retail was just not for me. I've got a short attention span and dusting shelves was just really boring. So I got a job at this phone sales shop called Three. It was like one of the forefathers of the smart, but it was terrible technology at the time. They really were a little premature on introducing their phones, in my humble opinion. These phones were really disgraceful and just didn't work. This was a job based on KPIs. One of the first jobs I ever had. I was so bad. I was the worst performing person in the entire company, as far as I'm concerned, in Australia. I remember essentially being fired from that job. I was let go because I didn't meet my KPIs. And I ended up getting a job at a menswear store called Rod and Gun in Australia. This was in the Maya Centre in Brisbane, and I hated it. It's a bit of a theme here. I found myself bored again. I had to iron shirts all day. Had no interest in sales, still don't. And it was just boring. I remember coming in 3 months after I'd started, hungover as hell. As soon as I walked into the store, the manager asked me to sit in the back. She said, "Today's your annual review. Finish the shift and we'll talk after the shift." I couldn't finish the shift. I was that hungover. She made me, 'cause she knew she was about to fire me, stay in the back with my head over the sink. I'm not happy with my behavior back then when I really had a lot of pain. I didn't know how to self medicate properly. I ended up being fired and felt really ashamed. I went home and told my boyfriend, and he was not happy with me because he probably witnessed how many jobs I'd already had. Anyway, a little time goes by. In a better place and I get a job at Blockbuster, one of the biggest stores in Southeast Queensland. I remember really having fun in that job. I loved it. I don't know if there's anyone out there who worked in a video shop before they became redundant. It was fun. It was cool. I would finish work at midnight. I'd be bringing home 10 movies. I'd stay up till 2 a.m., watch a couple of movies, sleep in. I was studying at uni. Then I met my boyfriend. I'm still partying hard. I'm living in Fortitude Valley, a partying town, flying by the seat of my pants. To make hours more convenient for my relationship, my boyfriend found a job in insurance, travel sales, and I got the job. And it was my first ever office job. I liked it because I take easily to technology. I'm efficient, I like organization systems and creating order. I took to it like a duck in water. And I ended up being the backbone of our travel sales team. I actually won an award that said that. I was proud of my work ethics. I stayed for a couple of years and then I was poached. A friend suggested a role at Defence Force, recruiting for the Army, Navy and Air Force in Australia. It sounded exciting. I'd never really brushed with anything to do with the Defence Forces. I don't come from a defence background. My role was as a civilian or a civvy in the office with a bunch of uniformed people who were recruiting candidates. And I really enjoyed it. I think any kind of role that requires someone to put an efficient system in place and run with it, I did pretty well. And I really made some great friends and loved it. Then my partner and I decided to move to London. A lot of Australians move to London. I've heard it's a rite of passage, the working holiday visa. I was 27. I knew I had until about age 31 to get this opportunity. We had an amazing time. I got a job straight away. I got an amazing job. A lot of Aussies just get work in pubs, but I actually got a job at the Healthcare Commission. And I landed this wonderful job, an amazing boss who became my friend. I was hired as one of the first of a new project called the Hygiene Code to build a team and go and inspect every single trust or hospital in the United Kingdom. We created an inspection schedule, hired doctors, nurses, microbiologists, and they reported their findings. It was official. We went out to the media regularly, and this was reported across the country of our results, and I loved it. I met some of the bestest friends there, and I partied hard. Yes, that theme was still there. Every Friday night, I got really drunk and continued that little saga on the side. But I was a functioning alcoholic. I didn't drink during the week and I did a good job. When I returned from London, I could have stayed longer, but only stayed a year because I couldn't handle the weather. It was too drizzly, too cold, too often for me. I moved to the Gold Coast. I moved in with my parents and it had been the first time in many years and it felt like going backwards. It was temporary. My goal at this point was to get a 6-month contract in some sort of office work, save up a whole lot of money, and then relocate to Canada and work from Canada. Now, I have a Canadian citizenship because my dad's Canadian. I got a 6-month contract, exactly what I wanted, but I hated the role. It was administration for mobile nurses. So nurses who were on the road visiting homes. I had to sort out their schedule and their administration, all their crazy paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork in the medical industry. And I just found myself feeling indifferent again, a massive apathy, just no energy inside, totally drained, unhappy, sad, depressed. I ended up biting my lip. That was one of the first indicators. I was put on antidepressants. Those antidepressants had terrible side effects. I ended up becoming a total zombie. It was one of the hardest parts of my life. My dad said, "Melise, why don't you get a job?" I was a high achiever, a perfectionist. None of that had changed. I was just really depressed and I had no motivation. But I changed my antidepressant. And look, as a side note, I don't take antidepressants now. I wish that I'd never been on them, but I don't regret anything, if that makes sense. They should be used for people in crisis, not just to cope with life. That's my personal opinion. I spent many years numb, and to me, that's might as well be dead inside. I'd rather be feeling pain than nothing now because pain is something that's helping me heal. It's recognizing the pain. It's going into the pain. It's accepting, validating, acknowledging pain, wounding trauma. This is what I do as a coaching counselor now. So I'm very passionate about it. And that's why I thought I'd just take a moment to mention that. So much more to be said on this topic, but that's not the point of today's video. I got a job at a pub up the road. I loved it. I always loved hospitality work because I'm with people on my feet, having fun, creating order out of chaos, making people happy, serving food. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a temptation in hospitality, and that was drugs. They're much more common around these kind of areas. At the time I decided to go back to university, I had finished my first degree. I didn't really have any use for it. I knew the job market where I lived was limited. This is how I saw it. And I don't believe this anymore. I think that what we see as possible is all we get that's possible. And at the time, my perspective, my vision of what was possible for my career was based on the external world and what I saw around me in the job market: aged care, childcare, teaching or nursing. So I went and I did a graduate diploma of education, secondary. I became a high school teacher. They decided what subjects I would teach based on my first degree, which was arts and film and television. And it's funny because I have no experience in film and television. I'm working this pub job and I'm exhausted because I'm studying a full-time degree and I'm working 30 hours on a weekend. And so it's very tempting to try things that you're given that help you stay awake. I'm not going to go into it any further, but you get the idea. I was very naive about things and I didn't like myself. And so I didn't treat myself with respect. And I see a lot that I didn't see now. I wish I could meet with my younger self and validate her feelings, which I never did. Help her feel good about herself. But I didn't feel good about myself. I was happy to escape. I had underlying pressure to perform, achieve, show my worth. I was a big people pleaser. I got this degree and I had 6 or 10 weeks in a school. I did not enjoy it at all. They were difficult schools, low socioeconomic schools, a lot of troubled kids. I'm trying to teach art and there was just no interest in half the class. In my naivety, I thought teaching would be about the subject matter, but actually it's a lot about discipline. And that's not where my strength lies. Disciplining others, it just doesn't do it for me. And it makes me frustrated. One thing I've learned is that frustration is a red light warning that I'm going off in the wrong direction, and not to persevere or push through frustration. Uno, but to recognize it as a boundary that I've crossed in my own life and to go back to something that feels better and more fulfilling and that fills my cup instead of drains me. And that's where I found that I have moved into alignment. Anyway, I finished my degree and I thought, I don't want to teach here in Australia. I'm going to become an international teacher. I was quite serious about this. I ended up getting a couple job interviews. One was for a school in Singapore, and another was for a school in Dusseldorf in Germany as an art teacher. I had to go to Sydney for the job interview for Dusseldorf. That was a secret one I wanted. I met up with an old flame who I'd met in London, who was now living in Sydney. I didn't get the jobs and I ended up relocating to Sydney on a whim 2 weeks later. I was looking for escapism and excitement. Sydney was a party town. Average age 34, I was 31. I got a job in a bar and I loved this bar work. I got a job at the old Woolloomooloo Hotel. It's a famous spot where sailors used to pull up for their beers. It was a raucous old hotel and it would go off on the weekend and it didn't help my drinking problem. So I thought, I've got to fix this. So I got a job full time at a school of massage. And I loved this job. I thought I did at the start. We got free massages once a week. I actually met one of my best friends back then. It was about organization and scheduling and helping the students with timetables and their results and setting up rooms for the massage school. It was fun for a while, but then I started to see that this was a fast moving company that was growing quickly and they were understaffed. And it was overwhelming. The one thing that I am really well aware of now that I don't do is multitasking. Mm-mm. That was a buzzword for a long time in job ad. I thought I was a great multitasker just from my experience in hospitality, but this is different. When you switch from one task to the other in a role that's very administrational, it creates immense fatigue. If you've got too much to do, then what happened for me was I felt like I was going to implode. So my drinking got worse. I had a hard time around that time. I got written warnings. In my early 30s, I was still struggling with alcohol back then. I quit that job and I got temp jobs. One was for the Heart Foundation, a not for profit raising awareness around heart health and looking for funds and donations for their campaigns. I worked in marketing and I thought it was fantastic. And then I got a job at Bodum, which was like a homewares company based in Denmark and an amazing office right on the wharves of Sydney, Jones Bay Wharf. The Danish team and even the owner's son would come down and we would take them out to amazing restaurants and wine and dine them and feed them crocodile and strange cuisine. But I really didn't like that job. I struggled with it. I got very depressed. There's a theme here, right? Every office job, I got depressed. I started to sink deeper and deeper into that apathy, that same familiar feeling of indifference, inertia, and I felt flat and unmotivated and back on antidepressants. But I was just doing the best I could to survive. It was around this time that I started studying NLP, neuro linguistic programming, because my partner at the time, he worked for a company that offered it. So I got a heavily discounted price to do my practitioner. My life changed. There was resistance at first. I was not happy about some stuff I was learning. I was very resistant and angry, but it caused me to look at myself and see I'd been a victim and realize I had to throw that out as a coping mechanism. I had to take responsibility for my life, something I hadn't done. I'd always lived vicariously through my partners. I didn't know how to have fun. I didn't know how to relax. I just knew how to work and escape, numb myself. And that's all I ever did. This course showed me a lot of stuff and I couldn't unsee it. It started to change the direction of my life. I got a job in an office as an office manager and it seemed like an accident at the time, but I feel like it was fate. I worked for a gaming company and they made slot machines, the games, the software for Vegas, Macau, big cities with big casinos. I'm actually not an advocate of gambling. And that's why I'm not in this role anymore, one of the biggest reasons. But at the time, it was far removed from the end product. I worked in an office in Sydney, a team of about 30 or 40 people. I actually became friends with my recruiter later on. And he told me that the boss had asked him to hire someone pretty. I'd never thought of myself as pretty. And that's a whole other side story. I always thought I was ugly. And that sounds ridiculous, but they still hire like that sometimes. They won't tell you that, but that still happens. But they didn't know that I would be efficient and a good office manager. I worked mostly with introverts, software engineers, graphic designers, programmers, producers, very left brain, introverted, and I'm very right brain, extroverted. So I found myself wanting to bring, this sounds corny, but light and love and joy into the office where it might feel stale and quiet and dull sometimes. I arranged events, I did birthdays, and I was given a lot of autonomy. That's something no one had ever done in an office job for me before. Total space. I ran my own show and I really loved it. I got to do things regular office managers might not do. I totally redesigned a whole floor and got partitions in and a new office space in. I got to oversee all the human resources side of things because it was a smaller office. I got to help with travelers from India. We had a lot of software engineers who would come over from India. I also got to do things like arrange the team to go over to Vegas every year. And it was just really fun. And I made great friends that I still call friends today in this job. And it's interesting. I even did a little side work doing a bit of graphic designs. My boss paid for me to do a Photoshop course. I was supported and came away from that job with so many skills. The reason I left that job at the time was one, I knew that I was seeking something more aligned. And two, my brother had been diagnosed with melanoma cancer. He was given a time to live. And there's a video I've made about that. I needed to move up to be with him. I was living in Sydney. He was in Queensland, in a different state. I needed to move up to be with him, to spend, I don't know what years left with him, precious time with him. I moved back up. Interestingly, a month before I left, I met my husband. We met in a pub, a local pub in Sydney, around the corner from my office. His friends were my colleagues. It was love at first sight. He's a Canadian. I thought, why am I meeting you now? I'm about to leave. He said, it's okay. I'm thinking of a sea change. I was relieved. I visited him for a few months, flying down on weekends, and he moved up 6 months later. I got a job back at Defence Force recruiting. I was friends with my old boss. He suggested the new branch and I got a job, but I didn't enjoy it. It was a different role slightly. It was more admin based. Previously, I had been an assessment coordinator, so I was coordinating the candidates. Now I was just doing admin on the computer at the front. And I just fell flat again. Indifferent, apathy, all the same things again, like a theme. I became good friends with the manager and he invited me to house sit for him while his wife and him went overseas. And my husband to be came up and we lived at their house for 8 weeks. House sat a big dog. We had a wonderful time. It was my first experience living with my soon to be husband after only meeting him 6 months prior. So I didn't like that job much. Yeah, I made some good friends, but I was bored. To escape that, I got a job at a tech startup company. I'm laughing because this did not work out. This role was 2 roles combined. I was almost like a data analyst mixed with a customer service person. I was doing too much work, too many different things. Like I said, multitasking fatigue. I ended up getting very depressed. I remember crying when I drove home from work regularly. I brought this up with my boss. She goes, Melise, I was crying for 3 months straight when I got my job. It's okay. Everyone cries in this job. You'll be fine. I thought, hang on a second. Are we normalizing crying in work? Anyway, I quit that job and I thought, no, what I'll do is I'll register as a teacher again. It had been 8 years since I graduated and I'll get some casual relief teaching as a high school teacher. So I did all the paperwork and I couldn't bring myself to do it. There's no way I want to step foot on a school ground. I really don't like that sort of work. So I got a job at the convention center and I loved it. Are you surprised? Hospitality again, doing different events, every kind of event you can imagine. I'm helping in all sorts of capacities, loved it. And I started up my little NLP coaching business. Interestingly, I had started one in 2013 when I first learned NLP, got my master's practitioner by 2015. and I did an NLP coaching course, but I didn't have the confidence to start this business. So in 2018, when I got my hospitality job at the convention center, I threw up a website and I thought, I'm going to start. I was really scared. I didn't feel confident. I was worried I just wouldn't be good enough. Not good enough. You're not good enough, Melise. Don't bother with it. I gave it a go and it just fell to the wayside. And then one day I saw this ad for a trainer and assessor, a dream job. It said, change people's lives for the better. And it had all the right words. It was for disengaged job seekers who were on Centrelink or the dole, perhaps were immigrants or had mental illness or learning difficulties or crisis home situations. So these were people who were down and out in their luck and they had challenges in a tough life. I wanted that job so bad. In fact, it asked for a certification called a training and assessment, and I didn't have it. So I actually applied for the job and I said, I'm in the middle of studying this training and assessment, which was a little white lie. I actually enrolled just when I sent the application. Then I got an interview. They wanted me. They loved my background. They loved the fact that I'd done NLP, which was a big draw card for them because a lot of their course foundation work was based in that kind of mindset change. Essentially, I just had to teach this very simple course, but I could write my own content around emotional soft skills and helping people become more engaged. I loved that element. It was in alignment for me. I got my TAE, or my training and assessment certification, within a record 3 months, and I started the job. It was very autonomous. I didn't have any boss to report to. It was contract work. I sent my invoice at the end of a 3-week course in all different locations. I loved that. There was some challenges, as you can imagine, with the cohort I had to teach. Most were under duress to be in the course. If they didn't attend, they would not get paid their government payment. It was difficult, but I loved it. Anyway, COVID happened and the entire program was cancelled. That was 6 months into me doing that work. One thing with me is I've never been someone to get disappointed for long or to regret anything. I'm quick at picking myself up and just rolling with things. And I think that's been a big help in my life. When that happened, I thought, what is the next opportunity? I was a sole trader at the time when COVID happened. So the Australian government decided to pay sole traders $3,000 a month during COVID. I was getting paid and I didn't have work. So I thought, I'm going to study a diploma of counseling. Counseling is always that side thing that I always knew that I would probably enjoy, but I never got around to it. My diploma of counseling is one of the best things I studied. I thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the biggest reasons is because I highly value relationships. I value interpersonal connection. I value soft people skills. I love people. This course taught me how to be with people. I actually think everyone should study a diploma of counseling or some counseling skills because I learned so many beautiful skills that I use in my relationships today. Just like NLP changed my life, this counseling changed my life. NLP for me was learning how the subconscious mind works and how to change that, change your wiring and change your world. Counseling was how to hold space with someone, how to listen to their story, how to empower them to change. I thought this is the missing piece. And I just felt alive. I thought I can do this. I'm going to start my own private practice. And I actually did. I put up a website called boostofjoy.com.au and I started running free sessions. I thought, I don't have the confidence yet to charge. I'm going to run free sessions. I got all my friends and family to do a free session and write me a review. I got so much confidence from that experience. I felt ready to start charging. I found all the software and logistical stuff. I set up my own private practice and I did it. I tell you what, a lot of challenges arose around starting my own business. It can be very confronting when you no longer hide behind this victim mindset that you have to work for the man, if that makes sense, because you don't have to. We tell ourselves a lot of rationalizations, distortions, and generalizations to keep ourselves stuck, thinking that we are not responsible for our own lives and choices. When you're running the show, everything is your responsibility. There's no one to blame anymore. All these shadows started coming up for me around the fact that I had been a perfectionist and that I had put all my value and self-worth behind what I did to produce or achieve. I was exhausted. A lot of people will agree that when you run your own business, you have to start to prioritize balance for rest and relaxation. I didn't know how to do that. All I knew in the past was how to party and how to work. And I had quit drinking. I had become sober. I embraced the sober life. I had to embrace my shadows and face them. That I accept that I'm exhausted, that I accept that I overwork myself and overwhelm myself, and that I put so much pressure on myself. I started to be kinder to myself and realize that play is not just a luxury, it's actually a requirement for a healthy adult too. So I had the trial and error of running a business. I realized I had a fear of commitment in the past, and so I had to be committed to this business. That was a big one for me. I had a fear of exposure. I had to reconcile my fear of putting myself out there, advertising myself. And I started a YouTube channel, and that was scary. I actually started a comedy series, left of center for me, but I randomly thought I'm going to make some comedy out of COVID. And I put these little skits together, they're spoofs on my different shadow parts. Then I had to face my imposter syndrome, which I still sometimes find, even though I'm in wonderful roles, which I'll tell you in a moment what they're about. And I had to find my audience. One of the biggest challenges was, who am I serving as a coach and counselor? I had to work that out through trial and error. Definitely, I wasn't serving people in crisis. I wasn't doing couples counseling. Yes, it seemed that I mostly aligned with helping people like myself who had gone through addiction, perfectionism, control issues, anxiety, and depression. That's my audience, and it feels right. I never liked social media. I don't have a Facebook page as a social thing. I did back in my 20s, but I deleted the whole thing. I had thousands of people, I deleted it. And I felt this relief, and I've never regretted that. I tried Instagram. Oh, that took so much of my energy. And then one day Instagram decided to delete my channel because of something I said, which I will never work out what I did. I was running my business from home. I actually used this web platform to find my leads, and I would pay for the leads. I found the right leads would talk to their friends. And so my business started growing through referrals, word of mouth. It was a kind of organic growth rather than using social media. That worked for me. It was a load off not to have to do social media. I ran with that for a while, but I needed more stimulation. I was at home. My husband worked from home. Just wanted to get out of the house. So I got a part-time job in admin for a school of counseling. In fact, the same school of counseling that I studied with. I knew the course back to front. I knew the staff because that's where I did all my assessments. And I did this part-time role. I loved it because I was brushing with fellow students. There were aspects I found a little tedious. While I was in that role, I started networking events because that was something I'd already started on the side while running my business. I started holistic events for coaches and counselors on the Gold Coast. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Then I put that aside for a bit and got this part-time job and started networking events with the School of Counseling and started to get all these counseling graduates and current students together and got them networking and connecting. And I loved that. While I was finishing up in this job, I gave my notice because I saw my business was doing well. My boss noticed I had a trainer and assessment certification. And she said, would you be a backup trainer or assessor for our counseling college? 6 months later, I'm an assessor. I'm doing group assessment days. I was scared at first because it was the first time I'd run a group assessing role plays for counseling students. I loved it. I was around my favorite people, counseling students. They tend to be very soft, gentle, warm, and big-hearted. And I was assessing, and it was just something I could do, and I enjoyed, and giving feedback and encouraging them, watching them grow and graduate. Then they offered me a role as a mentor to graduate students. I'm now an assessor and a mentor. I run my own business. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm so fulfilled. I'm happy in what I'm doing. I'm 44 and I'm finally happy in my career. I want to share that because it's possible. One of the biggest things I learned, just recognizing where life takes you, you'll gather skills and bless someone. But more helpful for me even was the fact that I realized that I'm not so much an initiator. I'm an opportunist. I have learned to listen to my heart and say yes to things in my path, and they work out. And then that will bring something else, and that will bring something else. And it's like this constant path is being revealed to me that is a delight to walk. In the past, I would struggle. I didn't mention this, but I tried to start up a few little startup businesses. I started a pet painting business a couple times. That didn't work out because I lost interest. I won't go into all the little things I started. But essentially, my lesson is if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Don't force yourself into things. Learn your human design profile because I went through all of this not knowing it, but recently learned that I'm a 3-5 or a generator, and generators are supposed to take opportunities rather than initiate. I could have saved myself a lot of time. The other thing I've learned, and this is from the Gene Keys, which is a bit of an offshoot of human design, is that I'm a changer, that my best role is always going to be involving change and that it's okay to change. I'm never supposed to be in one job for the rest of my life. That was never supposed to be me. I embrace change. It's interesting because we try to find security, but security often comes when you embrace and accept that you need change. It's so interesting, isn't it? The other aspect of this is I'm a versatile. Maybe you struggled with this too, but I had all these different abilities and strengths, and I couldn't just choose one. I've come to embrace the fact that I don't need to choose one. I'm going to have lots of opportunities in my life. Even moving forward, I'm still learning about my unique nature. It's an ongoing journey. I'm so grateful for that. Authenticity is what has helped me align with what suits me. Saying no to the wrong things and yes to the right things. Learning to base your direction on your heart. I was all head based when I was younger. You need to be heart based. I would encourage you to look into what that means to be heart based, and you'll start to bring your internal guidance system online. It'll be a lot easier. You'll find that flow in your life, that grace. I hope this has been helpful. Much love.